Well, Round Lake was started by a group of people that got together, alcohol and drug counselors, and they met actually in our community as well. There was 4 of them, and then there was a couple from here, Emery Lewis, George Thomas, Tinker Watts, J.D. Billy. A group of about 4 of them actually started and sort of talked about the concept, and Tinker Watt actually had what he called a vision of a place where there would be healing for our people. And so what they did is they got together, they started the concept, and they went to a meeting in Merritt and called together the alcohol and drug workers or NADAP workers. And they called upon the communities to support, called upon judges and lawyers to support us in doing what we needed to do for creating a treatment center for our people. Well, you know, the biggest issue was alcoholism at that time. You know, I think that in our community as well, seen as an example, it was an issue with large numbers of people going into the jail system because of addictions, alcoholism. And I think there was lots of bootlegging going on at the time. I think that people were coming out of I guess just after sort of the being dry communities and then going into being a wet community where they could actually have alcohol in the 60s. So in that time period, alcohol really became quite prevalent. And it was causing lots of problems, lots of violence, and Round Lake was seen as a tool because a lot of our people were being incarcerated because of alcoholism. So we thought we'd better get together and do something, you know, for the people.
Do you think that were there any other First Nation treatment centers around at that time?
Well, I think the only one that was around at that time was Pound Makers in Edmonton. I think Round Lake was one of the earliest ones, the first one in British Columbia. It's one of the largest ones, and actually the largest First Nations program in BC. So at that time, there were very few treatment programs at all. I believe today there's 14 First Nations programs. But back in the late 70s, 1980s, there was only a handful of them across the country.
So what sets Round Lake apart from other treatment centers? What makes it different or appealing to First Nation people?
Well, I think the origins of Round Lake is what sets it apart, because it was really a program designed and by our people, for our people. You know, in terms of the directors that were involved, it wasn't a program that was run by outside experts. It was run by the different people throughout the communities in the interior. And I think that's what sets it apart, and also the philosophy, culture as treatment. Is one of the programs that really looked at the utilization of sweat lodges, smudges, and our traditional ceremonies as a part of the healing process. And I think that philosophy has developed and evolved into a place where people come because of that. They come here to find out their Indianness, because a big part of the addictions issues is people don't know who they are or where they come from. Well, in the early days, I became involved actually on the board of directors. I was elected chief in 1979 and also became, of our community in Spalatina, became a board member, actually president of the Round Lake Treatment Center in 1979. I stepped down as a president because my role as chief took up too much time, but I stayed on as a board member. I stayed on to a board as an active board member and worked with the board right until 1987, where I stepped down as chief, and I came over here to work as the executive director of the Round Lake Treatment Center. And probably some of the biggest accomplishments, I think, is really evolving and getting this program accredited. It was one of the first programs accredited by an outside agency, whether it was First Nations or not. We were one of the first ones in British Columbia. And I think that's one of the biggest accomplishments. I worked here for 14 years, and 9 of those 14 years we were accredited. And probably the other accomplishments is running, we did some programs nationally through here for the inhale and solvent abuse. We ran community-based programs in 4 different communities across Canada. We established a trauma program for the survivors of residential schools, survivors of trauma. You know, we piloted a youth program, a community-based and a residential program, and just learned lots about what we need to do for our youth. But I think probably the biggest accomplishment I had is my connection with the clientele here. You know, I think that I used to go in and speak to the clients every new intake and tell them sort of my philosophy and what they needed to do to get through the program. And really it was about them to make a decision about what they needed and what they wanted, not what anybody else wanted. So I think that's probably my biggest accomplishment, is being able to help people understand that they could actually get through this stuff and that we were here to help them. Well, I think the challenges, again, are always around the evolving, if you will, sort of the addictions or substances that our people are involved in. You know, it was alcohol, it evolved into, you know, some drugs like crack cocaine. Now it's evolving into crystal meth. So I think at Round Lake and at the treatment programs, and this is what people don't understand, when people come into these places from all across British Columbia and Canada, the treatment programs are a microcosm of what's going on in our communities. So when we see people here with heroin addictions, as an example, we see people here that are HIV positive, we see people here that are Hep C. And so the people that are coming here are what's going on in the communities, and people have to understand that. Pay closer attention to what goes on in treatment programs, because you're able then to say, okay, that's what's going on. You know, I think there was a time here the average age was between 40 and 50, and I believe it's between 20 and 35. So it's gone, the age of people that are getting addicted and coming into these programs is younger, which is good, but the drugs are much more worse. You know, the crystal meth is probably the worst one, the brain damage that it does and how people can't function. So yeah, I think that's what's really critical about programs like this in terms of the challenges, is how do you evolve programs based on those kinds of things that are coming at us, because some of this stuff takes longer than 6 weeks to deal with. It's over 30 years old and went from trailers that came out of the Mica Dam project to what you see behind us, these buildings. You know, it went from a place that was, you know, considered, how do you put this, it was, you know, from trailers to buildings. I don't know, it's hard to explain. It went from a place that was a vision and a dream to reality for people, and became what it is today. You know, the people that work here are really committed. You know, there's a good team of people that work here, the counselors, people that are important like the cooks and the maintenance people, you know, the client support workers, the administration. You see what's evolved here is a group of people already dedicated to saving lives, you know, and people can't underestimate how important one person or the whole team is here at Round Lake, because they see, you know, they've seen thousands of people here. Every year they see at least 300, and I think that this place saves lives, and I think that's what's really important about it. And I think that's it's hard to you know, from the board right to the staff, like I said, from top to bottom, from the executive director to the maintenance worker, they're an important part of the healing process. Well, culture as treatment is, you know, again, bringing into the healing part of it, our traditions, you know, the sweat lodges, the elders coming in, you know, the smudges, you know, those kinds of things are really important. Bringing ceremony, you know, UEP ceremonies, bringing ceremonies into here for the clientele and the staff. And so the legacy is that it teaches our people that there's more out there. You know, it teaches them that we do have a connection. You know, that our people are more than being addicts and alcoholics. You know, that our connection comes from a long ways back from our ancestors. And I think this place represents that, because this is a healing place. You know, the years that I worked here, I went behind the ridge here, and there's, you know, this is a place where people used to fast and have visions, and it's a healing place, and that's why this place is so powerful. It's a spiritual place, and it gets our people in touch with who they are, and they go back. And as usual, it's not that, you know, it's one of those things we ask people to learn from their own people. You know, we don't try to tell them this is the way to do it. And I think that's really important, is our people have to learn from their own. You know, the West Coast people, people off the prairies, every culture has to learn from their own people. So it's really important. That's the legacy, and I think it's borne out because of the thousands of people that have been through this place, they've become leaders. You know, whether they're political leaders, whether they're leaders of programs, or they're leaders of different, you know, whatever they've done, leaders in their families. You know, they've become leaders again, and I think that's what this place is all about. The legacy will live on because those are the people that continue to support this place. Wow. Well, Round Lake's had a real impact, not only in our communities and across British Columbia and across Canada, it's also had an impact internationally. You know, it's really, you know, what we do here, there's been people from all around the world who's come to see what we've done at Round Lake. You know, the Healing Our Spirit worldwide sort of event gathering that takes place every 2 years. I think that Round Lake's taken a role in that, and people come to see because of the philosophy of culture as treatment, Indigenous people throughout the world are experiencing the same things we did because of the colonial process. So I think Round Lake's had a real impact. But I think probably in terms of sort of individually what it's done, it's created situations, it's given people the tools from which to become themselves again. Like I said, become leaders, whether it's in their families, whether it's in their community, whether it's within their nation. And I think that's a big part of it, is that it's been able to give people a skill set that, for them the opportunity to grow without addictions and to help their own people. And I think that's what this place is, the legacy is left for individuals and families. Because whenever a person leaves here, they go back and they impact the family. And I think that there's generations of children that have grown up without addictions in their lives because of this place, and that's really important. Well, I think the 30 years is a long time for programs to be running and Round Lake to be operating. As with any program that's running as long as it has, there are people that have gone on, people like Graydon Alexis from the board, Emery Lewis, Agnes McCoy, people that I worked with on the board, and it's just like you said, what begins to happen is as people get older and they move on to the other world, is that the place starts to change, and younger people become involved, and they pick up the torch and pick up the legacy and continue it on. But I think sort of the 30 years is a long time, and when I see people that I've come back and I see people on the streets sometimes in Vancouver, different towns, and when I was working here, they'd come up and introduce themselves, and or their spouse would come up and say, well, hey, you helped my spouse and it had a real impact, thank you. I think that's what goes on here. That's the legacy of 30 years of that. Like I said, thousands of people have been through here, and it's really what's important. And staff members, people like Marge Macior, people that have worked here, and Alden Pompana, people are in the very beginning. Lee Brown, Lee's gone on to get a doctorate, and I think that, like I said, this place has created leaders not only just all over the place. It's had that, it was a place of great healing, but also as a place of great teaching, and it helped a lot of people. Well, 30 years, and when people come here, it's like, it's interesting for me because sometimes the people that have the most impact not necessarily are the people that are working directly. It's like I said, the cooks, it's the maintenance people, it's the people that are sort of there to give them support, because a lot of times it's about just listening. And I think the people here show that kind of compassion, are able to do that. And I think that when people come here, coming back after 30 years and different people, it's really important for them to know that it's more than just the counseling staff, is more than the administration. It's all the staff here are part of the team at Round Lake. Well, being a part of sort of the beginnings of Round Lake and being there for so long and contributing, I think, so much to the sort of the healing of our people, to me, is what it's all about. And like I said, for me, what was really important were the individuals that came here, the clientele. I think that to be able to open up a space for them where they felt safe and where they could heal and where they could actually go on in life was really important. And I think anything else, to me, doesn't, it's not really, it's not that it's not relevant, it's just that it's really about lives. And if I help to save anybody's life, I think that's what's important. Just like all the staff here, this place is about saving lives. How many, thousands of lives were saved? How many thousands of children were spared the alcoholism and addictions in their homes? How many thousands of children were able to, understand that they come from a place, they are people, we have a history, we are Indian people, and they understand their culture and understand who they are. How many of our people, because of this place, got that opportunity? Coming out of the residential school, coming out of the 60s school, coming out of those things that were designed to take that away from us. This place was designed to, put the Indian back in the individual. That's what culture is, treatment. And I think that's the legacy. And it was not just one person. That's what people have to understand. It's a multitude of people here. It's not only the physical people. Like I said, this place is a spiritual place. There's also, our ancestors are here to help when called upon in the ceremonies and the sweat lodges, in the water. And I think that's really important. It's not just about the physical being, it's the spiritual aspect as well. Really important. Well, I think Round Lake is, as our people, has to adapt. And I think that's a big part of it, is the evolution of more, drugs like crystal meth and things that are much more insidious in terms of what they do to our families and our people, is the programs here have to adapt. And I think there's got to be much more outreach into the communities, because this place is a place of safety and healing, but how do we bridge that into the communities so that the communities know, and the people that are there that come to Round Lake can also rebuild that community of safety right in the community, and that's where Round Lake has to go. Well, I think that places like this, healing places, that whether they're here at Round Lake or there are other places in British Columbia or across the country nationally, they're really a place for us to rebuild who we are as a people, to understand where we come from, understand that we have laws, understand that we have our own traditions, our own language, but more importantly to understand that we have our own healing processes, that it's the land and the water that heals. It's not just about sort of the therapies, the modern day therapies. It's also our ancient ones that work just as well. The sweat lodge, the smudge, the songs, the drum, the prayers, the kwakochin as our people call it, and the food offerings and our ancestors. So understand right across this country, wherever there are healing centers, that it sprouts those seeds of healing for individuals, for our communities and for our nations, to rebuild who we are, because we're coming out of an era of darkness and we have to rebuild ourselves. And this is a good starting place to do that right across the country. Well, I think like I said, the most personal experiences I've had when I went into the groups and I shared with them what they needed to do, and giving them a message of strength and courage, and that they had to face their demons. And I think that I can't put, there's not one specific thing. It really is about a culmination of those 14 years and the hundreds and thousands of people that I saw. And hopefully I got through to some of them, and that's all I really ask for, is that they take the responsibility themselves and do something. And yeah, that's really about it, because it's all about the individual's ability to change from within, because you can't change somebody from the outside.